All right, hi everyone. This is Daniel. Welcome to Quetzal Talk. A wonderful day here in El Paso, Texas, and we have Billy Bright of Wood and Wire here today. How are you doing, bro?
Doing great. How about you?
Good, man. I'm chilling this morning. What are you up to?
Just about the same. Mowing the lawn, mixing some audio, and just taking care of things, getting ready for the week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are you working on any new projects?
Well, I'm always working on stuff. Right now, Wood and Wire, the band I play mandolin in, we just released a new record, and so it's it's a new world for releasing records, I guess. Since we're not touring to support it, we're doing a lot of videos and recording radio stuff from home, which just means that we get to do a bunch of extra mixing and editing and stuff ourselves, and then share it with people. So that's been kind of like a bit of a full-time job the last couple weeks.
I bet it. Have you had any, like, live, live shows online or anything like that?
Well, we did a test run show about a week or two ago for we're going to do a longer full length like show on September 12th with the whole band. So yes and no. I mean, we've tried it out, made sure we could get all the, technical details sorted out in the studio we were doing it at. And, it went well, I think. So we're going to try it out. Like I said, on September 12th, try it out for real.
Ah, nice. So September 12th, and it's going to be streaming on YouTube?
Yeah, it'll be on YouTube and through our Facebook, profile with the band, and I think that'll be the two platforms you can get it on that day. And then it'll be on YouTube for probably the eternity after that.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. And and will you be playing the new song that you wrote? That's how I actually heard about you guys, called My Hometown, and it's about El Paso, right?
Yeah, it is. We'll definitely be playing that song. How did you hear about it?
Well, I was on KLAQ, the website KLAQ, and they made a mention that you guys were Grammy nominated, and you wrote that you were from El Paso, and that you wrote this song called My Hometown. And I looked at it, and I love the video, man. It just shows
cool.
who El Paso really is. It's a really nice video, dude.
Oh, that's great. Well, I wish I had been a part of the video. I don't get to go to El Paso that often anymore, but it was cool to see that KLAQ thing pop up, because that's like, it's like, I can't remember the name of the morning show, but that's what I used to listen to, like on the way to school and stuff. My mom in the car was KLAQ, and so it was really cool to have that mentioned. But our lead singer, Tony Camel, lead singer and guitar player, and he writes a lot of the music and does a lot of the stuff for the band. And he got in touch with me and wanted to do a video for the song, and it was when I was somewhere else this summer, and he took a road trip out to El Paso. We've stopped through there a couple times with the band over the last 5 or 6 years. So he went out there like a few weeks ago, right before he finished up the video, basically, and took a friend of his, Paco, who's from El Paso as well. He went to Cathedral, and they shot. Tony asked me a bunch of spots that I, recommended, and then he and Paco went and shot a bunch of El Paso, and it warmed my heart to see it. That's for sure. I think he did a great job.
Yeah, definitely. And so you have no family here anymore in El Paso?
I do, but my mom, who I lived there with for my childhood and up through when I graduated from high school, she had to leave a few years after I went off to college. She moved down south to well, down south, like Florida, to take care of my grandmom and stuff. And so, as far as going back home to El Paso goes, that was no longer
okay.
A deal. But my uncle, who we moved there with, originally is still there. He's an orthopedic surgeon there in El Paso. He has been for probably 35 years now or something. And yeah, that's how we ended up there. Was my granddad, when he was about to retire from the service, he got stationed at Fort Bliss, which is when my uncles, who were still living with him, were in high school, and they graduated from, I think, Burgess. And then they went on and went to UTEP and graduated from UTEP. And so my family, my dad was an Air Force pilot, and so we lived all over the place when I was a kid, but he died when I was real young. So my mom and us, she had 3 kids, me and my brother and sister, and we all moved in with my uncle, who lived in Montana at the time. And then he was finishing up his like medical school and all that. And he eventually decided to move back to El Paso because he loved it so much. He wanted to move back there and start his medical practice. So we kind of followed him there, and that's how I ended up growing up in El Paso.
Nice. And do you remember hearing any like weird stories in El Paso, like any haunting stories or anything about the tunnels underground in Sunset?
Well, not so much in Sunset, but I've heard about those since. When I was a kid, it was always the people were always talking about that like castle looking house that's up there in Kern Place on that park. I can't remember the name of that park anymore, but
that murder, that mystery where, well, they don't know what happened to that couple, right? Are you talking about that house?
I think so. Yeah. But there's this, it looks like an old castle, and it's right on the park. I think it's called Kern Place Park is the name of the park, but, and there was, this house that looks like a castle, and there was always, lore that there was tunnels under there that went like downtown and up under the mountain and stuff. Cause it's right there, right under the mountain. But I hadn't heard about the ones in Sunset. But I was reading some about them the other day. It's interesting. When I was in high school, though, I went to El Paso High, and there was I can attest to the tunnels there because I got to go check them out. I spent a lot of time in the catacombs down there.
What would you guys
and I never got
there?
to. Well, it was kind of funny. I mean, well, not funny, but it was. I was in this project when I was a senior, I think, or a junior actually, and it was. They had come up with this class. It was some sort of AP class or something back when that stuff was really new, and the idea of the class was that you came up with your own syllabus, and then you gave a presentation at the end of the semester, and that's what you were graded on. And so me and a friend of mine, we came up with an idea that we were gonna, because we played in music and bands together and stuff, and we came up with our concept was that we were gonna drive around El Paso and all the places around it, like, Waco tanks and just out in the desert. We used to go out in the desert and have bonfires almost every weekend and stuff, and go four-wheeling and all that stuff. And so we were going to make our school project. We were going to turn that into our school project, and we were going to go out and do all this stuff and write songs about it, and then build this like elaborate stage and put on a concert at the the auditorium there in El Paso High. Have you ever been in there to that?
Yeah, it's a nice auditorium. It's really old looking and pretty.
And that's, that whole auditorium itself has a lot of, El Paso High itself has a lot of legend and lore. I don't remember the most of it, but like it, you know, it was the first high school built in El Paso, and it was for a long time. I think it was built in like 1912 or something like that. And for a long time, or no, it was built because one of my teachers from there got in touch with me about something for the 100-year anniversary of El Paso High, which is like a few years ago. So yeah, it was built in like 1916 or something like that. And originally it was like the only auditorium in El Paso where like traveling entertainers or whatever could perform, you know. So they used to use it for all the for all these shows. There was this one famous, when I did all the theater and all that stuff at El Paso High when I was there, which is a big part of my El Paso experience and sort of how I got involved in the performing arts to begin with, was through one of my teachers there who I knew from pretty much the time I moved to El Paso and on anyway. But it's, I'll try to stick with what we're talking about here. So yeah, like the grand piano that they had there when I was in high school, some famous touring piano player had come through town, like on a tour on a train, you know, and they had this grand piano and he just left it there for him because, you know, he like gifted it to him because I guess he got a new one there wherever he went. But anyway, so we were putting on this project that was about us going on our adventures and writing songs about it and building this stage. And so that theater teacher of mine, her name was Mrs. Dominguez, and she gave us full access to the catacombs because the entrance was through her classroom. And she gave me and my friend Carl full access to the catacombs to build this like huge stage, which ended up, it kind of looked like there was enough 2x4s and plywood in that thing to build a massive half pipe. I mean, it was this huge, ridiculously large thing that we built, and we covered it with all these. He was a photographer as well, and we covered it with all these prints that we had done from our show, and built this stage that was like, you know, it floated like 15 feet in the air above this whole ramp-like object. But anyway, we spent hours and hours and hours down in the catacombs below El Paso High building this thing, and that's where we built it. And of course, you know, once you're down there, it's kind of like, oh, I wonder where this hall goes.
Yeah.
I wonder where this hall goes. And you know, there's that story about Toby Tovar. You know who that is, the math teacher there at El Paso High. He was like, I don't know. We always called him stand and deliver because he was like, you know, he was kind of like, I don't know. He was like a hardcore dude, and he apparently got snowed in there in one year with like in like 1987 with a couple of his, which is when my brother was in high school there, with a couple of his students, and they went. There was nobody else at the school, and there was only like 2 people that showed up for his class that day. So they were just like, well, he said, let's go down the basement and look around. And
all right, let's go exploring.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess they found some like brick wall, and one of the kids knocked a couple of the bricks through, and there was like some, supposedly, I mean, legend has it, you know, some, like a classroom preserved, like people's books and backpacks still in there. For some reason, there's just this big brick wall built covering it up. And there was crazy stuff down there. It was before they put the AC in down there. So it was like, you know, there wasn't all the, but all the crazy tunnels, you know, they had already been sealed off, but you couldn't get like into the ones that like go from there down into the, you know, underneath the city,
in the Juarez or whatever, supposedly.
Yeah, I mean that stuff is wild to think about. But I mean, there's no reason for me not to believe it. It's been proven time and time again that it's possible with the tunnels, right?
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your beginning, like, days in El Paso. Did you start out said online that you kind of started out in the punk scene here.
Yeah. So I guess we moved there. I turned 8 right after we moved there, and so I went to Mesita Elementary, and then we moved down. They moved us. We went to this school called Wiggs. It's like this middle school where all these different elementary schools dump into a magnet school, I guess they call it. But when I was in like middle school, I started skating, and me and all my skater buddies eventually started to play music, and that was kind of what we were all skating and listening to old punk rock, and you know, like you couldn't find any of that music anywhere, so my brother would go. We would get in my brother's car and go to the headstand and the Tumbleweed out on Dyer, and the headstand over there on, I think it's on Montana or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, to find it, they were the only place that had the music that we wanted to listen to, like a head shop. So
right.
we used to play. Well, the first concert I did was at the zoo, and it was
literally the El Paso Zoo.
Yeah. And we were playing for Mona the Elephant's birthday. And
that's awesome, dude. That's badass, actually.
Yeah, and it was us and this other band. I think they were called Phantasmagoria, and they were like, when we were in high school, they were like the most popular band in our high school. They were more like rockers and stuff, like kind of like pre-Metallica, kind of like what turned into the like Metallica and all that. Yeah. Before Metallica was like known, and they, but they were into like the Misfits, and I think Metallica might have been around then, but like all that old hard rock, Black Sabbath and all that stuff, which at the time there was that kind of hard rock, and then there was like punk. Like me and my friends were listening to like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and the Clash and you know, a bunch of that stuff, and
that's cool.
And then like Minor Threat, and then stuff that was new at that time. You know, at that time, like the Sex Pistols and the Clash and stuff like that was like, you know, they weren't together as bands anymore. That was like classic punk or whatever. Yeah. This was in the mid '80s, and then or mid to late '80s. But so yeah, I did that show at the El Paso Zoo, and then they used to do these they probably still do these like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, like
the Mad Ladies.
Yeah, they would put on these shows. I think it was them who did it at Western Playland, and they would have some of the bands play, and we played one of those again, I think with Phantasmagoria, and then I started to play in just a bunch of different bands, and over throughout high school, middle school, and high school, and the scene was kind of like we would play a bunch at like the Campus Queen, with like that guy Ed Ivy used to promote shows, and he had that. I don't know if he had that band yet, but it was right at the time when he was putting together that band, the Rhythm Pigs, which was one of El Paso's, like, I mean, back then they were like one of the bands that broke out onto the national scene from El Paso before, like, at the drive-in and all that other stuff that happened later on. But yeah, that was the first band I was in. It was me and Cedric Bixler and my friend Rafa Rodriguez and Duke Tron, as he played bass for us, and it was the four of us. That was probably when we were like 14 or something like that. And
oh man, so you've been for a while then.
Yeah, and then we went on and played all this stuff, and all got into different bands and all that. And we used to do a bunch of these, all the bands used to do a bunch of these, the Bands for Cans concerts that they would throw at like El Paso High and Coronado and all these high schools they were like a big thing back then. All the, with all the high school kids, it was like an opportunity to play a gig. And then we would play at the Campus Queen. And then they used to throw a lot of punk rock shows at the Mesa Inn, which was eventually they turned the club inside the Mesa Inn into, I mean, it was just a bar, but they called it Gdansk, and it was like a punk club for a while. And I guess a punk club, I don't know. It was when the bands that we knew played there, but it was, I mean, it was, I didn't have any intention. I wasn't like doing it, like trying to,
get famous or
make a career out of it or get famous or anything. It was just kind of like what we all ended up doing. None of us ever, I mean, some of those guys I found out many years later, a few of those guys, because I left after high school, and then a few of those guys that I had been in bands with, went on to have careers playing music or been in the scene with, a lot of them went on to do music as well. But I remember when we were kids doing it, there was never, it didn't seem like, people that did that for a living. I mean, I don't think we would even refer to it as doing it for a living. Those people to us seemed like, they seemed like people who had won the lottery or something, the life lottery, like out playing music with their friends is what they do, while everyone else's parents are working their asses off. Right. It didn't seem like something that was achievable or that there was any clear path to. So, yeah, I didn't have intentions on that kind of stuff at that point in time at all, for sure.
Then what changed? What made you decide that you could make a career out of it?
Well, I don't know if anything ever made me decide that I could, but I decided that I could try. Or, I mean, I could make an attempt. And I guess what happened is, part of the process of going through high school and figuring out who you are is that pressure to decide what you're going to do after high school,
Yeah.
And as I went through that process, I had become more and more just sort of enthralled with it. I had become enthralled with songwriting before I even knew there was a whole class of a whole distinction of type of people out in the world called songwriters. I had become infatuated with music production before I even knew what a producer was. I had just, I'd gotten a 4-track tape recorder when I was like 14 or 15. And it was like, I just messed around with it constantly because it was so entertaining. I had become very involved in the theater production in the scene in El Paso. Well, through my high school, but I also did a little bit outside of high school. And I just always enjoyed the life of producing events and producing music and sounds, but I didn't know that that's what it was called back then. Yeah. But so as I was going through the process of figuring out what I was going to do with my life, I entertained a lot of things. I did really good in high school and stuff. So I had options, I guess you could say. And as I was exploring all those options, it was like, okay, well, where am I going to go to college? Where am I going to apply to college? And I looked around at all these different places. I went and visited different places. I went and checked out their music departments and stuff, because I had started to think, well, I'll either go to see about being an architect or see what their music school is like. And I think somewhere in my senior year, I had kind of decided that wherever I went, because of my older brother, he's like a super music enthusiast, like a head, you know, he's like super into, he's like he's just so into it. For, you know, how some people are just like, whatever, music, that's fine. If it's there, if it's not. But some people almost,
their life.
Yeah, some people who don't play music or anything, but it does something for them that I don't know how to explain. But their interest level is just huge, and that's how he was. And so I would go around with him and all this stuff. And so he was in college then at this point. So when I was coming to the end of my high school time, I was going to visit him where he was in college, and we always shared bands and stuff because he knew I played music and was into music. So he was always turning me on to new things. But when I started to go see him, he went to college in Nashville. When I started to go see him in Nashville, and we would go out and see all these bands, like, you know, bands that are just a lot of these old classic bands like the Allman Brothers and stuff like that. And then some of the jam bands, like I remember seeing Widespread Panic when they were like opening for other people, and you know, and Fish and all these bands when they were like really young bands. I started to see all these jam bands and these college bands and stuff when I was like my junior and senior year of high school. And I was just kind of like, just started thinking, you know, when I go to college, no matter what I study, I'm going to start a band, nice. You know, because that's what I want to do, really, you know, and that's, you know, you're seeing all these college bands, and it just looks like the greatest thing from a kid in high school's perspective, right? You know, so, but eventually, towards the end of my senior year, I'd gone to see all these places. I had checked out their music schools, but they were all like classical music schools and stuff. I mean, I had even looked at UTEP. One of my good friends was, that I played in bands with and stuff, was deeply entrenched in the like flamenco guitar school there at UTEP. And I had checked out UTEP, but you know, they were all like not even closely related to where I wanted to go with music, or with what I already, you know, I wasn't prepared to go to any of those places either. And so but towards the end of my senior year, I remember another friend of mine, CJ, I was over at his house, and he was a bass player, and he had this brochure for this music school that he was interested in. And which I don't know. I don't know if I don't know why he didn't go or whatever, but he might not have been encouraged to go or something. But it was a school called Berkeley in Boston, which has since then become a very well known school for all sorts of styles of non-classical or non-jazz music. But back then, it was one of the only places you could go that focused on music other than classical music. You know, I mean, different schools had jazz departments or whatever, but Berkeley had like, they were a jazz school that also had like a rock and roll department. Oh, wow. But they didn't have a mandolin school back then, which is what I really wanted to play. But I went there and I applied. It was like, it's funny because I've been giving mandolin lessons for a long time now, like over 20 years, I guess. But But I remember, so I've had a lot of, they now have this bluegrass department at Berkeley and a mandolin department and all these great mandolin teachers and stuff. And so a lot of my students, or enough of them over the years, have wanted to go to Berkeley to study mandolin after they moved on. And so I've had to like write them letters of recommendation and stuff like that. And it's really hard to get into Berkeley now, you know, but when I was in high school, it was really easy. They sent you like a 10 question application that was like, how well do you know the major scale? How well do you know this? And I didn't know any of it, but I asked a friend of mine who was like a very educated music person that I was working on I was playing the music for part of this play that was going on downtown at the El Paso Playhouse, I think it was called, or something like that. Down, I think on Alameda or something like that. But we were doing the music for that, and I asked her, how well do I know this? How well do I know that? And she was like, oh, excellent, excellent, excellent. So I just put excellent on everything, and I got accepted. And you know, but still, when I went thinking I'm going to go find a band and you know, do that. Yeah. I guess at some point, somewhere within me, I guess I didn't decide I was going to try to do it. I decided that I was going to do it, you know.
So you're just going to do it. It's going to happen.
No matter what. Yeah, I was going to do it no matter what.
That's kind of the right mindset sometimes, I think, is just knowing that you are going to do it, and otherwise it won't materialize, I guess.
Yeah, I heard this great interview one time with one of the Marcellus kids, you know, the jazz family from New Orleans, and I can't remember their dad's name, but I think the interview was with Ellis Marcellus, and his brother is Wynton Marcellus, the great saxophonist, and they were interviewing him, and they were talking to him about when he was getting ready to graduate from high school, and his mom and grandmom were like asking him a lot about, you know, where he wanted to go to school and what he wanted to do and all this stuff, and he said, well, I think I want to do music, you know, like he came from this very accomplished, famous musical family, and they were like, but don't you want to have something to fall back on or whatever? And then he went to talk to his dad about it, who was the you know, the patriarch, the one who had started it all with all these musical children. And he said, Dad, you know, I've been talking this back and forth with Mom and Grandmom and this, that, and the other. And his dad said, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to play music, or do you want to do something else? And he said, well, you know, I want to play music. And then his dad said, you know, if you really want to play music and that's what you know you want to do, I would suggest you don't have anything to fall back on. Right. So, and you know, I think that there's a lot to that.
That's a good point. Like, otherwise you're just gonna focus all your energy on other things too, and not fully commit to something, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you know you can always fall back on something else, you know, it's not I think anyone seeking to make their life out of any art form, whether it's, or not even any art form, but being their own boss, you know, whether you're opening a retail store or creating your own podcast or putting a band together or selling paintings, or no matter what you know, it can be pretty stark, and it's all consuming. I mean, to say it's a lot of work is a bit of an understatement, I think. It's all consuming, and, you know, if you have something to fall back on, that's a temptation that I think, can, you know, it can maybe steer you in a different direction than you know, in an idealistic sense of like always pursuing your passion or whatever. Yeah. You know, that being said, I have lived the opposite side of that coin quite extensively, where I thought, well, you know, I really respect the guys. There's one of my favorite musicians and mandolin players is this guy named John Duffy, and he's got like the most, I don't know, just badass attitude within this musical genre that's very, especially back when he was around, very, very sort of, I don't know if stuffy is the right word, but you know, kind of tight ass, I guess is a better description. But he was always radical and sort of like a punk rock dude or whatever. But he ran this band called The Seldom Scene, where he was one of their, you know, the guys that had started it or whatever. And his philosophy, I've heard with the band, was that you know, everybody needed to have a day job, because if you didn't have a day job, you would end up out there working yourself to death just trying to get by, and you wouldn't, you know. But this was somebody who, you know, I needed all that time that I spent in my earlier years to literally learn how to do my craft. I mean, I didn't start playing mandolin when I was 7 years old or anything. I didn't really start that until after high school. So I was, you know, certainly not ahead of the game. So I just kind of dove off the cliff and have just made it work over the years, and used all of my other time to learn how to keep practicing, keep trying to learn how to play my instrument.
Right. And then, so what brought you into the mandolin? What made you so passionate about the mandolin, I guess?
I don't know. That's certainly something I've asked myself over the years. You know, I could have been like passionate about bass or something. That's always in demand. People always need a bass.
Yeah.
But
it's always the bass player needed.
Yeah, exactly. Or drums, you know. But there's plenty of lead guitarists out there. But when we started playing, or when we first started doing anything close to playing music, when I was a young teenager, I wanted to be the drummer, and I begged my mom for, seemed like forever, to get me a drum kit, and that wasn't happening. And well, eventually I talked her into taking me to a pawn shop to, I worked summers and I had saved up some money, and I wanted to buy a drum set, and she took me to some pawn shops and we looked at some stuff, and right at the moment of almost committing to getting a drum set, she didn't really want that. I mean, I don't blame her. But
noise and everything.
Yeah. I mean, she talked me into getting a guitar, which I got, and I was fine with, and I enjoyed. And then, you know, over the years of playing the guitar and trying to learn how to play the guitar and all that, I mentioned my brother, who was a big influence in me as far as sharing music and us sort of experiencing music and stuff together. And he's always turning me on to new stuff. And somewhere along the way, I had transitioned from like at the headstand, we go to buy records and stuff of all the stuff that they didn't sell at Sound Warehouse, and which was pretty much everything we wanted to listen to. And we'd go in there buying all these punk rock records and stuff, and then looking across the glass cabinet that holds the bongs and the sex toys, there'd be these pictures of the Grateful Dead and all this psychedelic rock stuff. And eventually we started to check all that stuff out and got into jam bands and stuff like that. And somewhere along the way, I think it was after he had left Nashville and moved to Austin, like my senior year or something like that, at high school, we got into this band from Austin. Well, I had gotten into the Grateful Dead and all this stuff, and then there was this band called Colonel Bruce Hampton and the Aquarium Rescue Unit, and they had this amazing mandolinist, and I didn't even know what the instrument was. I had seen it like on a couple REM videos and on that Guns N' Roses Paradise City video where Slash picks one up off the wall in a music store and starts teasing around with it. And I've been like, what is that? And heard it on a couple of Led Zeppelin records, and but then I saw it live for the first time, and then with the Colonel Bruce Hampton and those guys, Matt Mundy was a mandolin player, and then I got into the sort of sounds of bluegrass through two primary things, which was Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead and this guy David Grisman, who is he was like the king of the mandolin back then, forever, and he still is. If you're listening, David. They put out they started doing this album that was like a crossover between bluegrass and Jerry Garcia's psychedelic rock stuff. And then in Austin, there was this band that my brother turned me on to, and that we started to go see live in Austin, called the Bad Livers. And they were an actual acoustic roots bluegrass music trio, but they were they were the first band that I ever saw that was like an acoustic trio who had bluegrass. They had like banjo, upright bass, and fiddle, and some guitar. They would switch instruments and stuff, and a tuba, and they would do all crazy shit. But I saw them, I don't know, in the early 90s in Austin, and Danny Barnes, who's still around and who's become a good friend of mine now, but he would be up there just, shredding this banjo to pieces, sort of like the banjo equivalent of I don't even know I can't think of an electric guitar player who's that cool, but as far as speed and virtuosity, sort of I don't even know who to say, but Joe Satriani or Eddie Van Halen, or you know what I mean? Just the out of control, just ridiculous licks, Yeah, unhuman. But he was up there doing it wearing a cut off tank top Metallica shirt, they would cover Motorhead songs and shit, and it was they were so, that's people do that all the time now in bluegrass and acoustic music and stuff. But back then they were so far on the cutting edge and so far ahead of their time. But I was fortunate that they were the band to see them when I did. And they, that was kind of it. That's kind of what put the last nail in the coffin for me. I just fell off the cliff, fell down the well of all this shit. And I grew up in El Paso, but my family is from the deep South, like, you know, Alabama and Florida and stuff. So I think there was kind of always some sort of a
natural urge
somewhat
towards it,
sentimental curiosity. You know, I didn't have like an urge to be like that's kind of what I liked about the Bad Livers, is that they showed me that you can, and what I liked about Garcia and Grisman too is, you know, one thing that I never really stuck to me with like bluegrass and stuff is this sort of like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just something that, like uneducated hillbillies play, because that's sort of like the pop culture view of it. You know what I mean? Especially back then. But anybody who plays the music knows that, and you know, people that, no matter what they look like or what they believe, you know, it's not something that is, it's not, I don't know how to explain it. It's a, you know, it's definitely
more sophisticated sound.
Yeah, it's a deep art form. It's a sophisticated thing, and you know, it's if you, any of the documentaries you can watch on bluegrass or country music sort of delve into the cultural sort of misunderstanding of the depth of the music and the sort of poetry of the duality of how they at one point, there's one term that's been used for it called hillbilly jazz or whatever. It's like the performance is so improvisational and so deep, but you know, it's sort of hidden under the exterior, sometimes it's hidden under the like the simplicity of it, of the, you know, the outer shell. But so that's the Bad Livers sort of showed me how, you know, I mean, there was a lot of sort of there was a lot going on in my head at that time, you know, about just wondering who I was and my family, being from where they were from. And I spent every summer down with my grandparents. And so I got to really experience the sort of Southern culture thing. And you know, my grandparents were really cool. They weren't, and, you know, not to sound anti the South, there's things, you know, all the problems that are in the South exist pretty much everywhere, I've realized over the course of time. But the South definitely is known for a lot of things that I don't identify with, I guess, is the best way to put it. But like it is known for things that I do identify with as well, which I realized it was the music part of it. Some of the music, like growing up in El Paso and then catching on to the mandolin, it was kind of like, why do I keep coming back to this instrument? You know what I mean? I wish I could answer the question better for you, because I don't really know the answer myself. It's been something that's been a mystery to me all along, but I can only guess it had something to do with the deep roots or something, or seeking an understanding of who I am.
It was some calling. He was calling to you.
Yeah, exactly. Over the hills and far away.
Right.
Yeah.
So how was it like being Grammy nominated?
Oh, that was a trip, you know. It was certainly, it wasn't something that was ever on my radar as far as a goal that I was, you know, that I could now check off my list or something. Cause I would never in a million years, have imagined that. for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, I mean, I play bluegrass mandolin, and that in and of itself is not really something you see a lot of there. Although I thought it was really cool last year that what's the dude's name that did Old Town Road? Come on, why am I forgetting that little? You know that song?
No,
Old Town Road.
I'm really bad with names, actually.
Take My Horse to the Old Town Road. Oh, it was like the hugest song last year. Anyway, he was when he was on the Grammys, he was holding the mandolin.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was really cool. But he Lil Nas X is who it was. But anyway, so the Grammys, yeah, that's like not something I think of immediately when I think of bluegrass and roots music. But that being said, they do have a bluegrass category at the Grammys. However, what we do in Wood and Wire is not what I would consider necessarily. I guess the best way to say it would be that it's like on the fringes of what some people might consider to be bluegrass. And so that I would never have myself expected to be nominated for a Grammy. You know, it's kind of like we put our record out on a record label, Blue Corn Music, out of Houston. And the record label, you know, submitting your work to the Grammys is kind of something that a record label does, you know? And, so they did that, and they do it with all their artists. It's sort of, you know, it's just what you do. It's just part of your business model if you're a record label. So they submitted it, and it was a complete, I guess to answer your question, it was like a complete shocking surprise. And, and, you know, it was really cool too, because it made me realize that maybe something's changed over the course of my life, in that what I think people think bluegrass is, it is narrower than what is actually accepted into what's considered to be bluegrass, which is, you know, it's kind of like, well, mission accomplished in a sense, because I feel like, you know, since the Bad Livers and all that stuff, I feel like a lot of people have been trying to push the edges of bluegrass outward. And it didn't start with the Bad Livers. I mean, that's been the case with not just bluegrass, but any traditional music forever, you know, whether you're talking about, I mean, you know, when they wanted to add the accordion into mariachi bands, that was, you know, bluegrass. I think I'm glad that I live really close to San Antonio. I live like right between Austin and San Antonio, so I'm exactly an hour from each town, and I love San Antonio because, yeah, I love San Antonio because it reminds me a lot of El Paso. Sort of, it's way more Latin influenced than Austin is, you know.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
I mean, just deeper Latin influence. Not that Austin doesn't have it, because they obviously do, but like in San Antonio, like there's a big like mariachi tradition there, you know, and there's like that was a whole thing, you know, like when when the German influence came in on the mariachi music, and they started, and the accordion became very popular in these bands, and that, you know, but like with the bluegrass stuff, to be able to have stretched, it's a traditional music. And so it's always been, ever since day one, since Bill Monroe invented it or whatever, it's been progressive, because it's always defied the norms of country music when it came out as a sort of, and became a subgenre of country music. But, you know how it is with traditional music. People are always, the audience is sometimes, you have to walk a real delicate line, because if you go too far, they're like, you know, they think it's blasphemous. You know what I mean? Because people like, me too. I mean, like the purist or whatever. Yeah, I didn't get into that music as a purist. However, I found my way back to the original stuff, and I became a hardcore purist for a long time, just as a natural part of the process of learning the music, you know. And then over time, it changed, and I guess I grew out of that too. But as far as, you know, as far as it relates to the Grammys, I think that's the coolest thing about that experience for me, was realizing that, you know, what the industry, or what all the, you know, the people who are voting about this shit consider to be bluegrass has, you know, expanded enough to include what we do as a band in that. And, that's really cool, just for bluegrass in general to me, because bluegrass is notorious for having some of the most just die-hard, fundamental, you know, traditionalists. That it's, you know, it's really cool to be able to do new stuff and be accepted into that fold. And beyond that, I mean, it was really cool. It was really cool to, you know, get to go to the Grammys too. Me and my wife went, and at the time we had been married, I think, for 11 years. And it was the first trip we had gotten to take together since our honeymoon 11 years before. So, it was really, that was one of the greatest things about it for me, is just taking a trip somewhere with my wife and having a couple days and getting to do something together. And it was, going to the actual, you know, going to the events that of course there's the televised, you know, awards show. But then they have it's like a whole weekend long thing. They have like the part that we were on is a whole different awards show that happens in the early day before the televised, like, pop music Grammys and all that. They have the one that covers everything from like new age music and Latino music and you know, bluegrass and blues, all the sort of like world music and all the subgenres that are below the like top 14 categories that they cover in the TV show. They have a different show for that. But then the night before, they have like a nominees welcoming party, which is like this huge party in LA that's like totally LA'd out, you know, with the lights and these massive piles of seafood. And you go in there and they really, it's like the opposite of a lot of the musicians' life.
Yeah,
they don't make you
over extravagant and everything.
Right. They don't make you like eat in the hall behind the kitchen before you go on stage and stuff like that, like they do with so many of the gigs. And you know, it was quite an experience for sure. So it was cool. And the Grammys themselves, it was the year that well, what's her name that hosted it last year? She hosted it 2 years in a row. Alicia Keys was hosting it, and she was so awesome. And then it was like there was like a surprise appearance by Michelle Obama, and there was it was wild, you know. The security getting in there was pretty intense, and the security getting out of there was pretty intense because there was all these like
getting out,
you know. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like we were leaving, like it was like they had the whole block, like a few blocks around, like on complete lockdown because like Michelle Obama and other like world figures were there, and so like in order for the van that was going to shuttle us back to the hotel to even get in there to pick us up. They had to wait in this line and go through like a bomb checkpoint and all this shit. It was crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I guess
totally.
I mean,
security,
I guess, but
yeah. We were like, after like 2 or 3 hours of it, we were like, okay, this is awesome. Now let's go back to the hotel bar and watch it on the TV there and kind of escape the crowd. We were done. I mean, it had been like a super long day. It started at like 9 in the morning, going and doing the red carpet and then going to the early awards show, which is the one where they were going to announce our category. And then once you're in the complex, you got to be there like all day long. And of course we were like dressed to the nines and my wife was in high heels and stuff. And it was like, by the 2 hours into the actual nighttime awards show, we were like, let's get out of here. And so we went outside and it was like freezing cold and we had to like stand there for like 40 minutes waiting for this hotel shuttle van to come pick us up because it was stuck in the security checkpoint line. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But anyway, the things you don't think about, I certainly didn't think about any of that stuff.
All right. Well, that sounds like such an experience, man.
For sure.
Yeah, it looks like we've been here for like an hour, and I don't want to take up all your time and all your days. So, is there anything else?
I understand.
Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
Well, I don't know. I got to thank Miss Dominguez, who was most instrumental in getting me involved in the performing arts as a kid in El Paso. And I don't think if it was for her and me happening to be in El Paso and her happening to be in El Paso, that I would have pursued any of this stuff. So I'll say that, and thank you to El Paso for all that and everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. They was so grateful, and it's awesome to have teachers that are really encouraging, I guess.
It makes all the difference, she I was in school with her daughter we were in the same grade. And so, whenever we had a class play in like third grade, she would come in and take over. And so we got to know each other really well. And then as I went through high school and all the programs with her at El Paso High, she changed her name during that time because she went from being Miss Dominguez to Miss Gadry, I think was her new last name.
Okay.
But she just died last year, I think. But but she was she was incredible, and she really trusted me and gave me a lot of opportunities, and that gave me a lot of experience under my belt in a lot of different avenues of the production world. But the behind the scenes and the on the stage stuff, so I learned a lot from her, and that's where it all started in a lot of ways. Yeah, so
she's definitely a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
All right, Billy. Well, thank you very much for that. And just one last thing: is there for everyone listening? What's your Facebook page that we call "Listen to your next live show"?
Yeah, the band's Facebook page is it's Wood and Wire Band. Wood and Wire, kind of like a fence.
Yeah,
I think we compete with the fence company for our placement on Google.
Well, hopefully we can get you guys above them, or get you guys to win that competition.
Yeah, man. Well, we hope to come back to El Paso one of these days. It's always one of the first places whenever our booking agent asks us where we want to go, I say, take us back to El Paso.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Hopefully we'll come through there. I'll let you know if we do.
Yeah, definitely, man. It'll be great to maybe have a face-to-face conversation, and especially once this pandemic thing's over.
Yeah, man. That'd be cool. It'd be good to meet you in person.
Oh yeah, man. Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, thanks for the time and the talk. I enjoyed it, and best of luck with everything on your podcast and beyond.
You too, brother. Thank you. It was great again having you on. You have a good one.
Thanks. Take care.